The air inside the quarantine chamber crackled with sterile coldness, a near-antiseptic hum that clung to the walls. Rows of medical instruments, floating above magnetic trays, pulsed gently with blue light. The Zoraxian medics, with their smooth, pearlescent skin and elongated limbs, moved around the patient with precision. They communicated in clicks and hums, their large black eyes reflecting the flickering lights of the chamber. Despite their tireless efforts, the patient's condition had worsened. Commander Volka lay still on the hover bed, his dark red skin covered in strange, spiraling lesions. His once imposing figure bulky, even by Zoraxian standards, looked gaunt, ravaged by the mysterious disease that had swept across his system like a firestorm. His breathing was shallow, and his pulse weak. For 3 weeks, the medics had tried every known treatment, but nothing had worked. Dr. Wren, the head of the Zoraxian medical team, clicked out another frustrated command. His slender fingers danced over a holographic interface, his segmented exosuit adjusting as he moved. He had been trained in a dozen alien medical systems, a prodigy in xenomedicine, but even his vast knowledge had reached its limits. A sharp hiss as the chamber door slid open disrupted the quiet urgency in the room. A human figure strode in, clad in standard-issue medical fatigues, a stark contrast to the sleek, sterile uniforms of the Zoraxians. Dr. Lauren Hale was small, at least by Zoraxian standards, but her posture radiated confidence. Her dark hair was tied back in a no-nonsense bun, and her hazel eyes, sharp and analytical, surveyed the scene quickly. Dr. Wren turned, his frustration palpable even through the impassive mask of his species. His voice came out in the steady, calm tone that was characteristic of the Zoraxians, though the undercurrent of annoyance was clear. Dr. Hale Wren said, his clicks translated by the universal communicator, "This is not a case for human intervention. Your physiology is far too different. We have the best minds in the quadrant working on this." Lauren raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by the condescension. "I'm not here to step on any tentacles," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "But I've read the case file. You've tried everything in the Zoraxian medical database, and Commander Volka is still deteriorating." A murmur of agreement passed through the human medical team who stood behind her. They were an odd sight in this Zoraxian facility sent here as part of an interspecies medical exchange program, but they had been relegated to menial tasks, their knowledge and methods considered inferior by the advanced Zoraxians. "We've tried everything," Wren reiterated, folding his elongated arms. "We're on the verge of stabilizing his condition." "That's what you said last week," Lauren shot back. "And I'm guessing things aren't going well if you called for me." Wren's eyes narrowed, but he couldn't deny the truth. "We did not call you. You volunteered." Lauren ignored the jab, stepping closer to Volka's bed. The lesions were spreading faster than before, and the commander's face was contorted in pain, even in unconsciousness. She bent down, running a small scanner over his body, her brow furrowed in concentration. "This disease," Lauren began, after a moment of silence, "doesn't act like anything natural. It looks like a cellular breakdown, but it's targeted." Almost like she trailed off, tapping the side of the scanner thoughtfully. Like what Wren asked, barely masking his impatience. "Like it's a weapon." The room went silent. Wren blinked, his large black eyes widening. A bioweapon, his tone was skeptical, but a hint of fear crept into his voice. Lauren nodded. "This pattern, the way the cells are breaking down, how the lesions are following the circulatory system, it's too systematic. If it was a pathogen, it would be more random, more chaotic. This is deliberate." The Zoraxian medics exchanged glances, their silent communication momentarily disrupted by Lauren's unexpected diagnosis. They were highly advanced, but warfare, especially biowarfare, was not their specialty. The Zoraxians were peaceful scholars and diplomats, not warriors. Wren shook his head, dismissing the notion. The Zoraxian military does not engage in such barbaric practices, and no species we have encountered has used such crude tactics. "Maybe not in your world," Lauren said, looking pointedly at Wren, "but in mine, bioweapons have been a real threat for centuries. This might not even be from a species you know." For a moment, Wren stood motionless, weighing her words. Then he waved a hand dismissively. Even if your theory holds some merit, what can you do? We've already exhausted our treatments. Lauren hesitated, then pulled out a small vial from her belt pouch. I brought something from Earth. It's experimental, unapproved even back home, but it might be able to combat whatever's breaking down the cells. The Zoraxians murmured again. Rin eyed the vial with suspicion. A human remedy? Do you understand how dangerous that could be? Not as dangerous as doing nothing, Lauren countered. Look, if we don't try something now, Volka's gone. You have no other options. There was a long pause. Rin stared at her, clearly struggling between his pride and the grim reality of the situation. Finally, with a resigned click of his tongue, he nodded. Proceed. Lauren wasted no time. She injected the solution directly into Volka's arm, watching the monitors carefully. The room was tense, the hum of the medical equipment growing louder in the silence. Minutes passed. Nothing changed. Rin sighed, shaking his head. You see? It's ineffective. Then Volka's heart rate monitor spiked. The lesions on his skin stopped spreading. Lauren grinned triumphantly. It's working, she said, stepping back as the other Zoraxian medics rushed forward, examining the commander. The lesions didn't vanish completely, but the rapid deterioration had halted. It's a start, she added. We'll need more treatments, but this might just save him. Rin was silent, watching as his team scanned Volka's body, confirming the stabilization. He turned to Lauren, his pride still stinging, but the gratitude in his eyes unmistakable. It seems. I underestimated human ingenuity. Lauren smirked. Happens a lot out here, I'm noticing. Before Rin could respond, the alarm klaxons blared throughout the medical wing. A flashing red light illuminated the sterile white walls, and a robotic voice announced intruder alert. All security personnel to high alert. What now? Rin muttered, rushing to the nearest console. He tapped a few buttons, and a holographic map of the facility sprang to life. Multiple red dots indicated breaches at several points along the outer walls. Lauren frowned, moving to his side. Who's attacking? It's not possible, Rin said, his voice laced with confusion. This planet is in neutral territory. No hostile species should be able to enter our airspace without setting off alarms long before reaching the facility. Clearly someone didn't get the memo, Lauren said, her gaze narrowing. Looks like our bioweapon theory might have legs. Before Rin could answer, the facility shook violently. Equipment crashed to the floor, and the lights flickered. Lauren grabbed onto the nearby bed to steady herself. We need to secure this facility, Rin said, his usual calm composure slipping. If these invaders are related to Commander Volka's condition, they cannot be allowed to capture him. Agreed, Lauren said, her tone serious now. But if they're already inside, then we need to prepare for close combat. Rin hesitated. Our defenses are automated. We are medics, not soldiers. Lauren glanced at the human medical team behind her. Then it's a good thing we are. Lauren and her team had barely finished securing the quarantine wing when the first wave of invaders breached the inner corridor. The doors hissed open, and a group of unfamiliar aliens, tall, armored figures with segmented plates of dark green and spindly, insect-like legs, stormed into the room. Their weapons were sleek, organic-looking rifles that pulsed with a greenish energy. The Zoraxians, who had never encountered this species before, froze momentarily, unsure how to react. But Lauren's team had dealt with worse. Hold your position, she shouted, pulling a pistol from her holster. The human medics, many of whom had seen combat during their tours on various colonies, quickly formed a defensive line. Blasts of green energy tore through the air, sizzling as they hit the walls. Lauren ducked behind a console, firing back in controlled bursts. Her pulse pistol was no match for the invaders' advanced weapons, but it was enough to slow them down. Cover me, she barked at one of her team members, a stocky man named Reyes, who laid down suppressive fire as Lauren moved to the other side of the room, getting closer to the invaders. She activated a small holo drone that began projecting a distortion field, confusing the enemy's targeting systems. Ren and his medics watched in awe as the humans, with their simple yet effective tactics, managed to push the invaders back. It was chaos, but controlled chaos, something the Zoraxians could hardly comprehend. Where they relied on technology and precision, the humans fought with grit, resourcefulness, and an almost reckless disregard for the overwhelming odds. One of the invaders, a particularly large figure, charged at Lauren, its mandibles clicking menacingly. She barely had time to react as it swung a sharp, bladed arm toward her. She ducked, narrowly avoiding the strike, then rolled to the side, her pistol firing 2 quick shots into its torso. The creature stumbled, but kept coming. Persistent, "Aren't you?" she muttered, dodging another swipe before drawing a small energy blade from her belt. With a quick, fluid motion, she plunged the blade into the creature's neck, severing vital circuits and sending it crashing to the floor. As the last of the invaders fell, Rin approached, his expression unreadable. "You killed them." Lauren wiped the sweat from her brow, breathing heavily. "Yeah, they were going to kill us, so I'd say it was a fair trade." Rin looked down at the fallen enemies, his eyes reflecting a mix of horror and fascination. "We are healers, not warriors." "Sometimes," Lauren said, her voice softening, "you don't have a choice." The facility rumbled again, and Lauren glanced at the monitors. More invaders were breaching the outer walls. The first wave had been a test. The real fight was just beginning. "Look, I get it," she said, turning to Rin. "You're not soldiers, but if these things get to Volka, all your work here, everything you've built, it'll be for nothing. You need to fight, or at least help us hold them off." Rin hesitated for a long moment, then nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. "We will do what is necessary." The next few hours were a blur of chaos, combat, and survival. Lauren's team worked tirelessly, reinforcing barricades, tending to the wounded, and strategizing on the fly. The invaders were relentless, but the humans fought with a desperation born of experience, of knowing what was at stake. At one point, Reyes took a shot to the shoulder, the green energy sizzling through his armor. He grunted in pain but kept firing, his face grim with determination. Lauren patched him up quickly, applying a field dressing and a shot of adrenaline before he was back on his feet. Ren and the Zoraxians, meanwhile, adapted as best they could. Though they lacked combat training, their advanced medical knowledge proved invaluable. They developed temporary shields, patched up wounds, and used their technology to sabotage the invaders' equipment remotely. As the battle raged on, Lauren began to notice something strange. The invaders were focused on getting to Volka. They seemed almost desperate, as if their lives depended on it. "They're after him," Lauren muttered, crouching behind cover as another wave approached. "This isn't just an invasion, they're trying to finish the job." Hours later, when the last of the invaders had been defeated, and the facility was finally secure, Lauren stood in the quarantine chamber once again. Volka's condition had improved significantly. The quarantine chamber hummed softly, the lights dimmed to a muted glow after the intense firefight that had ravaged the facility. Lauren stood over Commander Volka's bed, her eyes scanning the monitors, watching the steady rhythm of his vitals. The lesions had stopped spreading completely, and his breathing was deeper, more even. The human serum had worked far better than she dared hope. She wiped a smear of dried blood from her cheek, still coming down from the adrenaline that had fueled her through the chaos of the last several hours. Her team was exhausted, and so was she. But the battle wasn't over yet. Volka stirred. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing his dark red irises, which flicked from side to side before focusing on Lauren. His voice came out in a raspy whisper, thick with disorientation. "What happened?" Lauren stepped closer, her tone gentle but firm. "You're safe, Commander. We fought off the attackers, but it looks like they were targeting you specifically. You're in a Zoraxian facility, but I'm the human who treated you." Volka blinked slowly, trying to process the information, then shifted slightly in the bed, grimacing as he did so. "A human. Medic." Lauren nodded. "That's right. The disease you were suffering from, it wasn't natural. We think it was engineered, a bioweapon designed to break down your body at the cellular level." Volka's face hardened, and even in his weakened state, His expression radiated the fierce pride of a Zoraxian commander. Who would dare? His voice was low, simmering with fury. What species could have such cowardice? That's what we're trying to figure out, Lauren replied. But first, we need answers about the attack. Do you have any idea why someone would go to such lengths to target you specifically? It's not just a random assassination attempt. Volka stared at the ceiling for a moment, deep in thought. Then his gaze returned to her. There's a species. We encountered them on the outer rim, near the border of uncharted space. I believe they call themselves the Giscari. They were primitive compared to us, but cunning. I suspected their rapid technological growth was unnatural, likely from an external source. Someone giving them advanced technology to push them beyond their natural limits. Lauren nodded, following his explanation. So you think they're being manipulated by another species? One with access to sophisticated weapons, like the bioweapon that infected you. That's my suspicion, Volka said, his voice stronger now. The Giscari wouldn't have the knowledge or resources to develop such a thing on their own. I dismissed them at first, believing they were too fractured, too disorganized to pose a real threat. But I may have underestimated the power behind them. Lauren folded her arms, frowning. If this bioweapon came from an unknown species, one with enough tech to push a civilization to the brink of war, we're dealing with a much bigger problem than we thought. Before Volka could respond, Dr. Wren entered the chamber, his expression unreadable. He moved quickly to Volka's side, his long fingers tapping at the floating interface to check his vitals. Commander Volka, Wren said after a long moment, his tone clipped. Your recovery is proceeding as expected. The human remedy has stabilized your condition. Volka's eyes narrowed as he regarded Wren. And you, Doctor, did you stand idly by while the humans saved my life? Lauren shot Wren a sharp look, but before she could intervene, Wren straightened. His black eyes blinked slowly. Then he spoke, his voice even. I would not say idly. The humans brought unconventional methods and unique perspectives that, while unexpected, proved effective. We would not be standing here now without their intervention. Lauren raised an eyebrow, surprised by Wren's admission. The Zoraxian doctor was proud, yes, but he wasn't blind to reality. Volka, too, seemed to relax slightly, though he still studied Wren with suspicion. Good, Volka said at last, his voice losing some of its edge. Then we fight together. Lauren crossed her arms, her gaze shifting between the two. Speaking of fighting together, we've got bigger issues. If this Giscari theory holds, they're not working alone. We need to know who's pulling the strings, and fast. Otherwise, this bioweapon could just be the beginning. Wren nodded slowly. Our records show that the Giscari have remained in relative isolation since their initial contact with Zoraxians. But if what the commander suspects is true, we may be looking at a larger conflict, a conflict that extends beyond our region of space. Lauren sighed. She had already considered that possibility. A well-resourced species, hidden in the shadows, providing lesser civilizations with advanced tech. It spelled disaster on a galactic scale. Volka's eyes gleamed with determination. I'll contact my superiors. The Zoraxian fleet will need to prepare for more than simple diplomacy. We can't afford to be caught off guard again. Lauren nodded, though something about the whole situation still didn't sit right with her. The attackers had been ruthless, yes, but too direct. Whoever had orchestrated the bioweapon and the assault had miscalculated sending in foot soldiers to retrieve Volka rather than finishing the job from a distance. Her gut told her there was more to this, a deeper layer to the plot that hadn't yet revealed itself. Just as Volka prepared to speak again, a soft chime interrupted the conversation. Wren glanced at the console, his eyes narrowing as an alert flashed across the screen. He tapped the display, bringing up a live feed from the outer perimeter of the facility. Lauren's heart sank as she saw it. A massive ship, sleek and angular, hovered just beyond the planet's atmosphere. It was unlike anything they had seen before, its dark hull shimmering with energy patterns that defied traditional physics. The ship's design was alien, even to the Zoraxians. It was almost biological, as if it had grown rather than been constructed. Volka swore under his breath. That's them. the ones behind the Giscari. They've come to finish what they started. Lauren's pulse quickened. We need to move now. If that ship breaches orbit, we won't stand a chance. Rin's fingers flew over the interface, sending rapid commands to the facility's defense grid. Our planetary defenses are minimal, he said grimly. We're a medical outpost, not a military installation. Then we make a run for it, Lauren said. We'll never survive a direct confrontation with that thing. We need to get you, Commander, to a secure location so you can warn your fleet. Volka didn't argue. He knew the stakes as well as anyone. Agreed. But we need to be fast. Lauren turned to Rin. You'll have to come with us. We're not leaving anyone behind. Rin looked conflicted for a moment, his gaze lingering on the medics and staff members moving through the corridors. Then he nodded, his resolve hardening. I'll see to it that we're ready. The escape plan was hastily executed, but there was no room for error. Rin had managed to reroute power to the facility's shuttle bay, where a small, fast transport ship sat waiting. The medical team worked quickly, loading essential equipment, while Lauren and her medics armed themselves with whatever weapons they could scrounge up. Outside, the alien ship hovered ominously, its energy readings growing more erratic. As it prepared to deploy something, whether it was a landing party or a full-scale assault, no one was sure. But it didn't matter. They needed to be gone before it arrived. As Lauren led Volka onto the shuttle, she glanced back at the facility. It had been their sanctuary for so long, a place of healing and safety. But now it was a battleground, and they had to leave it behind. Once aboard, Lauren sealed the hatch, her fingers flying across the console as she powered up the engines. Rin took his place next to her in the co-pilot seat, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a quiet urgency. We'll have one shot at this, Lauren said, her voice steady. If they detect us before we break through their sensor range, we're done. Rin nodded. Understood. I'll monitor the energy fluctuations. If they attempt to target us, I'll try to scramble their readings. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle lifted off the ground, ascending quickly through the atmosphere. Lauren kept her eyes on the control panel, adjusting the course to avoid detection, but her heart pounded in her chest. As they broke through the upper atmosphere, the alien ship loomed closer. Its presence was suffocating, a dark specter against the stars. Lauren held her breath as they passed within range of its sensors, praying that Rin's modifications would hold. For a moment, it seemed like they had made it. The alien ship didn't move, didn't react. Then, just as they were about to clear the gravity well, the ship's hull rippled. Massive tendrils of energy shot out, lashing through the space around them. Hold on, Lauren shouted, jerking the controls to the side as the shuttle veered off course. The tendrils missed them by inches, crackling with destructive force. We can't keep dodging forever, Rin said through gritted teeth. We don't have to, Lauren replied, glancing at the console. We just need to get far enough to jump. She pushed the engines to their limit, the shuttle shaking violently as they sped away from the planet. The alien ship pursued, but its tendrils couldn't reach them now. They were almost in the clear. Now, Rin shouted. Lauren slammed her hand on the jump button, and the stars stretched into long streaks of light as the shuttle leaped into hyperspace, leaving the alien ship and the battle for the facility far behind. Hours later, they emerged from hyperspace, the blue glow of a nearby star bathing the cockpit in soft light. Lauren slumped in her seat, exhaling a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That was close, she muttered, glancing at Rin, who looked just as relieved. Volka, seated in the rear of the shuttle, spoke up, his voice low but steady. You've saved more than my life today, Dr. Hale. Lauren turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. Maybe. But we've got a long way to go before we understand what's really going on here. Volka nodded slowly. Agreed. But with allies like you, humanity may prove to be the key to unraveling this mystery. And perhaps, the key to defeating whatever threat lies ahead. Lauren managed a small smile. We'll see, Commander. We'll see. Outside, the stars shimmered, vast and indifferent to the small band of survivors now hurtling through their endless expanse. But for the first time in days, Lauren felt something unfamiliar in her chest, a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For now.